Dumelang, welcome to another great and exciting episode of GMTV. Of course, I'm your host, Kina Usrefilwe, popularly known as Gogo Moyo. Today, we're going to talk about something that's very poisonous to the human spirit, and that's the ego. Before we get into that, please make sure that you do subscribe as well as hit the bell icon so you can be part of our great and growing Note Gang. Today, we discuss the ego. What is an ego? It's your self-esteem, the way you view yourself, your self-importance. How does that influence you and the people around you or your work? An ego can be so bad that you can struggle to even integrate with other people because you're so conscious of yourself and your social standing that you don't feel like anyone else is above you or can be on the same level of you as you, or even be important to you. Egos are rather toxic, and for the most part, egos seek vengeance because they never ever want to be offended or even close to it. And as soon as that happens, there has to be some kind of balancing and a leveling that happens, almost to remind the person, stay in your place. As Mwana wa Badimu, how do egos affect us? Egos go as far as infiltrating indumba zethu and the way we treat our clients, patients, as well as each other. There are people who never ever want to feel like they're not spiritually advanced than the next person. That is largely ego-based. You can't expect everybody to be on the same spiritual advancement as you because our schooling and our lessons in our journeys spiritually are not the same, nor will they take us to the same places of learning or the same places of awakeness. For instance, you could be someone who's representing a large group of your kind, ebungomeni, and perhaps you're given a platform to go speak about whatever conversation is needed at the time, only to find the people that are in the same industry as you, they're not going to celebrate it because part of that is their egos not allowing the fact that it's you who's being chosen and put on this platform to communicate and speak for the whole group. It doesn't even have to be about how much you know or how much you don't know. It's about the fact that when they look at you, their egos can't stand the fact that it's always you who's the one that's actually spoken to or who reaches out and talks about the conversation. Ego as well infiltrates in Indumba zethu in the sense that if you're a person who's not teachable because you know everything, then you find yourself stuck with only the limited information that you have. For instance, I'd like to talk about plants that we keep or can keep in our homes or our gardens or in our sacred spaces and can actively influence our moods, the purification of the air, as well as our experiences with our ancestors. But I only have limited knowledge based on my schooling and my learnings. If I have too much of an ego, I won't branch out and ask other well-experienced people who actually are herbalists and are fond of that space. So now, I'm burdened. I'm limited to actually how much I can teach. I'm even limited to even allowing myself to be teachable. Other forms of realizing that one has an ego is realizing that you have a messiah complex. What is that, you may ask? It's when you want to play God and want to save everyone and save every situation. Guys, don't get me wrong. I believe etongweni. I believe etlozini. But Dimbaka are my everything. And everything starts and ends with them. But it does not mean that in a time like today where perhaps there's COVID-19, I'm now going to want to be the spokesperson or the one person who feels that I can cure the virus. I mean, especially when there's a history on the particular virus that's speaking on a global scale. And I want to behave as if I've got a messiah complex and feel like I'm going to be that one sangoma who's going to solve all the worldly issues about this disease, or this virus rather. So a messiah complex is when you don't realize that there's actually a limit to your capabilities or abilities or your area of influence. Ungacela i-vaccine or isipho sokulapha from idlozi lakho. You can ask for it, But sometimes you may find Idlozi lakho is more than happy enough for you to advise on ukuthi umuntu afuthe, because this virus, it stays in the nasal cavity. Manje fanele uyifuthele so that it dies, because it cannot live and survive when it reaches a certain temperature. That already is something that can enlighten and help other people. You don't necessarily have to go all the way and figure out that which herbs can I put together that's gonna now kill this virus in a person's body. And what about having dogmatic thinking or belief, where you may find that you're in a group of other izangoma and you're discussing ways of how to perhaps a chronic headache. And then now it becomes something that's not becoming ego-based, because people don't want to share and literally have a good back and forth conversation about how it is that you can heal something. A dogmatic belief is when you start fighting the person on an ego level and no longer based on the spirit. So now that means that you cannot naturally and progressively have a debate or a discussion about how to heal someone, because you believe that your way is the only way and it's gospel. So it's limiting in your thinking. It's very limiting in how you can actually grow and share your experiences with other people. So I've jotted down a few points of how exactly one can kill the ego. Firstly, you have to begin by adopting the beginner's mindset and always remaining a student. You cannot be a person who's always pushing to be the one that knows everything. Always focus on the effort and not the outcome. It's important to kill the pride before you lose your head. Stop telling yourself a story. There is no big narrative. You don't have to add to the story of your life. It's obvious, people can see. You're inspiring people from a distance, even those that who you don't even know. Forget credit and recognition, and it's important to stay out of your head. We like to build situations and circumstances in our head, only to find that it's not even near the truth, or you're not even seeing it from its true perspective. Let go of control and leave entitlement at the door. There's one very important quote that I learned from the mighty Bruce Lee, and he says, "Do away with the unessential and only focus on what matters." That's important because it's easy, and especially emsebenzini wethu wabongoma, where people can idolize you because ukita kahle nomwazi imithi, or you've got many children, and that already translates to you being a great healer, a great leader. That's not necessarily true, because it's a perception of something that you don't know. Again, how is it possible that ube ukobela and have so many children, but whenever wenza umsebenzi wamadlozi, you don't ever see those people? Where do they go? What kind of experiences do they have with you as a teacher? As Abadimu, speaking largely on the ego, it's important to remember that you are a vessel, that you are a tool, that you are a person that is helping to facilitate the learnings and the teachings which are much older and greater than you are. If ever you try to stray and try to make it seem as if all the power is on you, you're not going to get very far, because we deal in an industry of reference. We always refer back to our ancestors. We talk amongst each other so that we see the differences in language, in tongue, in how something can be exercised. I mean, umuti, for instance, is called many different ways by different people, yet it may serve the same purpose. And also, until you actually get to talking about it, you may not even learn about the other different ways that it can be used. We always have to realize that you have to be open to being taught, whether by your client, your student, or even bagobela wako, and most importantly, your ancestors. Now, if you're going to walk around with a big head, I know everything, and even worse, there are people that come to people's ceremonies but toilet imiti on their person, and lomuti lona is to actually ibaphakamise isithunzi even more, or even affect the person who's heading the ceremony. Now, this is where the contention becomes, because manje abagobela sebayalwa. And then who are we who are actually looking up to these people and needing to be guided by them? There is a song in our fraternity that speaks to exactly this. It goes something like this. Nyesaba lenzondo bagiti, yabulalu muzika baba, nyesaba lenzondo, yabulalu muzika baba, nyesaba lenzondo bagiti. Yabulalu muzika baba nyasaba lenzondo. Yabulalu muzika baba. How would a song like that exist? It's because we're hating on each other. We want to fight against each other. And we don't realize as we fight, we're showing our children that this thing exists. We're not showing them that we have to have healthy relationships amongst each other, because we never think about it tomorrow. Impandeyam is superior than yours. So many things that are very juvenile and trivial, instead of us collaborating and fighting against many important things. For instance, with this COVID-19, it came into our country. It realized we were very vulnerable because all of us work in silos. Everyone believes that their camp is superior to the next. We couldn't have even come together prior to even it coming into our shores and our land, for us to know that when something like this ever happens, what is our point of reference? How do we all assemble ourselves? What is the generic communication that's going to be spread out and it's going to be communicated by each one of us? We want to fight for ourselves in silos, get permits to show that I got a permit so I can carry on working because I'm recognized by people. And what about all the other people that also need to get those permits? Or even, do we need a permit if we speak as one global voice? Umsebenzi wethu ubalulekile in our country. And if there's one thing that this COVID-19 exposed about us, is that we don't have a belief system, we're not cultured, we don't believe in anything, because unfortunately the churches are closed. And now look, what are we actually doing with our lives? Let's lose the ego and realize that we have a big role to play as part of a community, and even in the small spaces that we keep and house for our children. That has been me. Today, I was talking about the mighty ego that has dropped a lot of people, and many giants have fallen over this very little trait. Be the difference that you want to be. That has been me today, and I've been your host with the most, Togozan.